welcome. And we are looking forward to Karen's presentation. As I was just stating that today our watersheds are endangered. We're hoping to learn more about strategies that directly impact our health access and the practical resources that the Lake County and the watershed plans present us. And so I'm very excited to bring in Karen, who I met at breakfast a couple of weeks ago. Karen comes from Flint Creek, Spring Creek Watershed Partnership. She has been dedicated in partnerships that improve water quality and preserve ecosystems for generations to come. She also has worked as a certified floodplain manager with the village of Lake Barrington. So she brings some extremely good experience and a wealth of leadership and community information to us tonight. So Karen, once again, thank you very much for bringing your expertise to us. We have a presentation that she's going to present, so let's bring that up. And there may be a little adjustments we have to do to that, due to that we've restarted the meeting. So Karen, the screen is yours.
Okay, let me get on back to the Zoom and do share screen. Do share screen again.
Mary, do you know Sandy Lycus?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Okay.
Please.
All right.
And just as you're sharing the screen, I know Kurt Wolford is here with the Stormwater Management Commission. And Kurt, if there's something you want to pop into the chat for a deadline, or otherwise we'll have you speak at the end and give us any updates on all the great watershed resources you have.
Sounds good. Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming back, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent.
Great. And I want to thank Global Waterworks and Lake County Lake Lovers for inviting me to speak today on behalf of the Flint and Spring Creek Watersheds Partnership. But before I get into the meeting, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the partnership. Our mission, as you can see, is to educate citizens and build partnerships. And we do a lot of work with HOA groups, municipalities, just to reach out and let them know about our watershed, because a lot of people don't actually know what a watershed is. Our group was formed back about 20 years ago, and it was a collaboration between the Village of Barrington, Citizens for Conservation, the Barrington Area Council of Governments, some townships, Barrington and Cuba townships, as a way to prepare a watershed plan. And I know you're going to be having talks about that in the future, Mary, but Barrington needed a watershed plan in order to apply for some 319 funding for one of our nature trails. So that goes along Flint Creek. So that was kind of the kickoff. And then in 2011, Spring Creek Watershed was formed. And so that's when it became Flint and Spring Creek Watersheds. And they're both side by side with each other. But before we get into that, I want to, Marion, this is where we might have some issues. The enabling of the video. Because I can't play this video now, how we did it that one time before when we practiced. Here we go.
Well, if you pop out and unshare and then come back in with the audio enabling.
Okay. Maybe it should do this now. There's like a 50-50 chance we'll have to listen to a 5-second commercial, but it usually gets out really quick.
Trump has unleashed a huge set of tax cuts for the wealthiest, funded by cuts.
Yep, we can hear it, Karen. So that's a good sign.
Are natural. I feel those emotions as well, but we got to channel it into action.
Raja,
sorry for the commercials. All different commercials pop up, but okay.
What is a watershed?
Perfect.
Is it a shed that holds water? No. Try again. A watershed is all of the land that drains into the same location or body of water. People tend to think only of water bodies, such as rivers, lakes, and wetlands, as being part of their watershed. However, any land, whether it is park, farm, forest, school parking lot, and even the soil we build our homes on is also included. Think of a watershed as a funnel, collecting all the water within a specific area and draining into the nearest body of water. Drop by drop, water is channeled into soil, groundwater, creeks and streams, making its way to larger rivers and eventually the ocean. Everyone in the world lives in a watershed. Watersheds know no political borders, whether local, national, or international. Our environment, our economy, and our society all depend on a healthy watershed.
So I like his English accent a lot better than my accent. So that kind of just explains what a watershed is at a very basic level and very quickly. So I like that explanation. Good. And Mary. Okay. So where are our watersheds and where are they? I like maps myself, so I like to know where I'm at in the world. And I would be remiss before I go on. A lot of the nice photos are from the Barrington area digital photo gallery, so I appreciate their sharing the photos. Flint Creek is primarily in Southwest Lake County. It's mostly the Barrington area. This area, if you're familiar with downtown Barrington, is the Village Hall and so forth. And it encompasses parts of Lake Zurich, North Barrington, a big hunk of Lake Barrington, and Barrington Hills, and a little bit of Inverness, some Tower Lakes, Fox River Grove. So it's a pretty big area. And next to Flint Creek, here's the Flint Creek watershed, and moving over into Cook and McHenry County is the Spring Creek watershed. But these both drain to the Fox River. And since most of you here are from Lake County, except for our friend out in Los Angeles, this is the Fox River watershed, this western part of Lake County. In the middle, we have the Des Plaines River watershed. We have the Lake Michigan watershed up in the northeast portion of Lake County, and the North Branch Chicago River watershed. So these all drain to a little bit different areas, but our area where I'm at in the Flint Creek watershed, we all drain to the Fox River. And the Fox River watershed, I mean, you think about it, it flows, you know, to the Fox River, to the Illinois River, Mississippi, and then the Gulf of Mexico. And I like this slide because it shows the dead zone. It's, you know, approaching 7,000 square miles of water that cannot support anything living, because everything has been, you know, as it goes down to the watershed, if you think about all the pollutants, the sediment, etc., that get down there, it's a dead zone. So it kind of reminds me of how everything here is connected, and why it matters what we do here to our downstream neighbors. So I like to talk a little bit about why we should care about our local watersheds. And if any of you have questions during the presentations, we're a small enough group, you can just, you know, ask now, or you can, you know, save it for later. But watersheds are important to our environment. They affect our pocketbooks, social impacts, etc. So I wanted to touch on some of those. So why should we care? Lakes, as you know, benefit watersheds by regulating the water flow, some flood control. They improve water quality. This is a picture of us doing some water quality testing out at Lake Louise in the Barrington area. And some of you here tonight may be on a lake or a stormwater pond that acts as flood control. There might be a restrictor. So that lake is very important to hold the waters when we have these heavy flashy rains, so that property doesn't get flooded. And obviously, you know, our lakes have a lot of recreational benefits as well. Another reason I think we should care is watersheds are important to the environment. They provide water filtration, flood control, habitat for wildlife. And I think of my own backyard as a small example. Over the years, I have planted a variety of native plants, and those help aerate the soil and soak up stormwater. So in addition, we created a rain garden in my yard, and that takes water from our roof and I have plants that like wet feet. And so that kind of holds the water and lets it infiltrate rather than it just running off and not doing anything any good. So I get a lot of butterflies and bees and bats and all kinds of good critters that keep the ecosystem in balance. So that's another reason, you know, watersheds are important for the environment. Many of you are very well aware of economic impacts. Our watersheds are critical for providing us with drinking water. So most of us down here in Southwest Lake County are on groundwater, whether you're in a municipality that gets its water from the ground. Some of you out there might be on Lake Michigan water, but it's still all important because the soaking in to the ground as it eventually gets to the groundwater can have a big effect on our water quality. And if you're getting Lake Michigan water, you know, it's going through a lot of treatment processes before you take that sip out of your faucet. So another reason, another economic impact, I think, is property values. When you have open spaces or when you have nature surrounding your property, you have clean water, clean wetlands that look good. I think most real estate agents would say that's, you know, an improvement for your property value. Another economic impact, of course, is tourism and recreation. I think of Wakanda, where you had the presentation of a few months ago, Mary, about, you know, Bangs Lake. How big is that for recreation in Wakanda? It's pretty big. I mean, they do events out there all year. So if it was really bad, they couldn't hold, you know, certain events and so forth. So one of the things that I think gets overlooked a lot with watersheds are the social impacts. You think about, you know, this really came into fruition during COVID when all of a sudden everybody was outside and enjoying nature and so forth. There have been studies that show when people are outside and they socialize, whether they're just by themselves walking in on a nature preserve trail or with others helping to plant, like this picture shows, that there's a sense of community and a sense of belonging. And in our area, they actually do a healthier Barrington study every few years. And it's a long survey they send out to a number of residents and they answer it. And they've been tracking it over the last 25 years. And the number one response in the last survey was why people moved to this area was because of the abundant, I'm quoting now, abundant natural resources and open spaces. So people value that. And I think they're healthier because of that. So when people pollute or garbage, you know, gets thrown into the creeks and rivers, that's very harmful to ecosystems. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. We're fortunate that we don't have a lot of that in this area, and I'm thankful for that. But our municipalities are actually required by law to check certain discharge locations into the creeks in their respective towns. And they perform annual, what we call dry weather inspections of the village's outfalls. And that's their sewers going into the creeks or lakes or wherever, because there's certain illicit discharge protocols that they have to follow. So if somebody calls up and says, hey, I'm seeing some oily water coming out into my, you know, into this creek from a municipal sewer, then they're required by law to follow up on that. And there's a whole system of reporting and actually searching for the cause of that. So that's actually, in my opinion, a good thing. Land development, which affects all of us in many different ways, it comes with a lot more water quality regulations than even 30 years ago. A lot of these water quality regulations didn't even exist back then. It wasn't really until the like the 70s when the EPA, you know, was formed and it took a while for regulations to get going, but now there's a lot more regulations on filtration and clean water than there used to be. And I think some of us in the industry are concerned that these regulations may go away with the current administration and how they're viewing environmental impacts. So, that is a concern. I don't think we can take for granted the curb stops we have right now for environmental issues in this, not only our area, but the whole country. So I'd like to touch on briefly what we can do to protect our watersheds. And this is a picture of our Flint Creek. And we have some very talented photographers around here. I didn't take that picture. So I would say maintain your septic system if you have one. That not only protects your family's health and saves you money by preventing certain repairs, but it also helps prevent overflows, which can contaminate the groundwater. But even if you're on a municipal sanitary system, if you're paying a sewer bill to your town, you're on a municipal system, a lot of the things also apply. For example, don't flush drugs. And the reason for this is, the fish and the macro, little critters and the, birds that feed on the fish and frogs and raccoons and everything else. There's been studies that they're getting, big doses of cholesterol medicine, for example, and heart medicine and things like that. So if you have extra drugs that you're not going to use, a lot of the pharmacies take them. Around here are the Village of Barrington will take the drugs that you haven't used, and you can just drop them off at the police station. You don't have to fill out any paperwork. You just drop them off in this like old mailbox, and they're done, and they dispose of them properly. So that's whether you're in a septic system or a municipal system. The same thing, don't flush wet wipes. If you're on a septic, you know this, but a lot of people on municipal systems don't realize it, but it ends up costing you more money because they clog the system when they're trying to clean and trash out the garbage from the septic system or from the sanitary system. So don't flush those. And it sounds really obvious, but don't flush toxic stuff like motor oil. Don't dump it down the drain, whether you're on a septic or a municipal system. Or even like there's certain hazardous chemicals, people use to like clean brick, for example. And if you have extra, don't dump that down the drain either. Maintaining your lawn to protect our watersheds, that's something I think everybody can do pretty easily, especially in summer months. Stormwater runoff picks up fertilizer and other lawn chemicals and washes them into the storm drains. So residents can reduce lawn chemical use and take care of their yard naturally if they want, or reduce the amount of fertilizers and weed killers they're putting on their lawn. We use a mulching mower, and that way because we're lazy, we don't ever have to rake. And even if you're mowing leaves, it mulches them back up and goes back into the ground and helps the lawn stay green and feeds the lawn. I also would advise not to mow too low. If you keep your lawn at 3 to 4 inches, the little roots that they do have, excuse me, get a little bit longer, and they hold up to the drought season much better. One of my pet peeves is people watering their lawns. So, we don't water our grass, and it stays green most of the summer. And pick up after your dog. That sounds really basic, but it was interesting. I was talking to a resident at one of our public events, and she saw this on our tabletop display and said, "Oh my God, I always thought that was good for, fertilizer for the lawn." And I said, "Well, maybe it is, but it's not really, and it just goes right into the streams in a concentrated amount." So cleaning up after our pets, we make our neighborhoods cleaner and healthier anyway. So this is why the public education part is so important. Again, don't dump the yard waste. A lot of times landscapers dump it into a creek, or a resident will just rake everything right into their creek that's next to their property. But even though clippings and leaves and branches are natural, they do degrade the water quality and impact wildlife if dumped too much into our creeks and streams. They release excess nutrients into the water as they decompose, and they also slow and sometimes block the water movement. So that can accelerate the growth of algae and can cause algae blooms. And so if you ever see this, mucky green layer covering a pond or a stream, that's an algae bloom. So try to avoid doing that. A money saving tip is use those leaves in your yards. If you can't mow them, over a few times or with a mulching mower, a lot of communities have leaf collection programs, whether it's in bags or they give you certain weeks where you can rake them to the curb. Know that if you put them in bags, then when they do pick them up, they're taking them to a compost recycling and they get used again. If they have the kind where they come and vacuum them up, fewer and fewer towns are doing this because it is so expensive. But if they do, try not to rake the leaves into the gutter until, like the day that they're going to come and vacuum them up. Because if we do have a storm, and Kurt can probably attest to this, they block, they fill the storm sewers and they block the inlets into the storm sewer system and can cause flooding. So. And a simple thing is go native. They have much deeper roots than grass, and they can infiltrate rainwater, which reduces the amount of water runoff. And they also create habitat for our bees and birds, and they can be just as attractive as natural landscaping. And you can even plant a rain garden in a small space. This is on a very small lot in Lake Barrington Shores. And it catches the downspouts from their roof and helps with the water infiltration. And, I think it looks gorgeous. Rain barrels, you've all heard of. You can reduce the stormwater runoff, and it means if you're in an area that have storm sewers, then that's less water running into the storm sewer so fast. It holds it back, and you can reuse the rainwater in your garden when you need it, after the rain stops. So unfortunately, the last 2 years, I haven't even hooked up my rain barrel because we've had such dry summers, and my rain garden, it's a little bit more mature now. It is absorbing all the water that's been coming off in our rains. Crazy, right? And I'm sure Kurt's very familiar with this as well about salting smart. It's not only the salt that we use on the roads, like the municipalities that are spreading the salt in the wintertime, but there's parking lots. If you're part of an HOA that has parking lots, you can talk to them and your contractor. Are you using salt smart methods to reduce the amount of salt and chlorides that run off into the water? And this is all, of course, toxic to fish, and it hurts water quality. And what some people don't get the hang of, that more salt doesn't actually mean more melting. For example, a coffee cup size of salt is enough for about 500 square feet of a driveway. So that's like 10 sidewalk squares, because you spread it judiciously and spread it out. And after the snow is melted, if you want, you can reuse it. You can broom it back up and reuse it again, and it'll keep working. Salt efficient water softeners. If your water softener discharges into your septic or into your sanitary sewer, that can help it reduce the amount of salts that are going into our wastewater system. So real quick, these are our agency members. So these are the towns and the HOAs and the groups that pay dues to the Flint and Spring Creek Watershed Partnership for the work we do. And we also have a number of associate members, which help us with all kinds of things, whether it's technical advice or giving presentations. They're all on board with us, and I really appreciate them as well. So that is it. I kind of ran through this pretty quick because I wanted to give you time to ask questions if you had questions, and we had a little bit of a delayed start with our friend from Los Angeles. So Any questions?
I had a question just on the property value. You talked early in the presentation about the relative value of properties based on the health of the water and the watershed. Have we
Mhm.
done any studies here in Lake County on that, either for you or Kurt?
I don't know of any local studies. Do you, Kurt?
Not a study per se. I know that the county and their Lake County partners, they do look at these types of benefits and values. And I've heard the same thing, that nature and green infrastructure, if there's properties that look out on nice, aesthetic, natural areas, those do command more of a premium than if you're staring at the back of a commercial or industrial or a loading dock. So um, I don't know about any studies, but we do know that the general people like seeing that out their
Yeah.
windows rather than
Well, and to your point,
non-natural areas.
yeah. And to your point, Kurt, like whenever, if any of you have gone shopping for a new home in a new subdivision, when they're just getting started, they always tack on lot premiums to the lots backing up to open space or ponds, that sort of thing. Because they can
Those
get,
were when I my prior home, when I lived in a townhome, they had it was a new development and lots were available, and the lots that were first to be picked were the ones that had a view of maybe the detention pond or some wilderness areas, and the ones that were kind of not picked through are the ones that are facing the road or facing the streets.
yeah, you're absolutely correct. So it's a good question.
Yeah, great answer. I see Becky's raised her hand. I'll turn it over to you, Bill.
Okay, if I ask my question, I know we're a small group. It's Becky.
Hi, Becky.
So I'm curious, how do we measure that we're making improvements in something as large as a watershed? What are your benchmarks? And do you have any historical data that says, this, I think you said, is 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, we have photos, we have data, and now in 2025, so what are we holding ourselves accountable to? I'm just curious.
So unfortunately, I think the apples to apples data is somewhat lacking because it takes so long to acquire it. We do water testing in Flint Creek every year, our group. And the Village of Barrington does it in Flint Creek as well, because that's where they discharge their treated sewage treatment plant water. So they're required by the EPA. And part of it is, I'll say, like, as you more not as scientific, like you go out to go fishing or something in Flint Creek. I have a member who routinely goes out to Flint Creek to go fishing with his grandkids and catch little things, and he'll report, oh, this year I saw A, B, and C species, which are indicative of good quality water, or this year I saw, and I forgot the name of these, some kind of minnows that will grow in anything, but I didn't see the other ones. But, that changes so much from year to year. And it's really difficult because if I go out, like I was out today actually and did my water quality testing this for the fall. And, we had rain, 3 weeks ago or so, 2 weeks ago. And now things are not moving as fast. And there's, but if I went out the day after the rain, I would probably get much different results than if I went, 3 weeks later. So when you're looking at, we have a lot of data, like we have the graphs of what the water quality is, and we kind of just look at trends, and we're at least holding steady and not going downhill. But again, like to me, it's like the day you go out and test. I mean, Kurt, do you have some opinions on that?
It's tough, yeah, because those tests are instant tests at one given point in time. They don't really capture a year-long watershed, what's going on throughout the watershed. But that's one requirement that the IEPA has just issued in their new MS4 permit, is that the municipalities who are the recipients of these MS4 permits, they will now be required to do 8 inspections per year, whereas prior it was just do it once. Now they want it done every quarter. And then not only are you doing it during the wet weather when you're seeing stormwater flowing through pipes, but also the dry weather flow events. So for a total of 8 inspections per year, that quantity has increased. So there will be more data points through this new permit. And then also just one other measurement that we use is when we update our watershed based plans, which we're doing for a few of these plans, we do detention basin and stream inventories. So we go down in the creek, we walk them, and we take photos and we assess and we rank and give different criteria on is this slope severely eroded? Is it just eroded? Is it stabilized? Is there other signs of impairments? So those are routinely done, and that does create a timeline. And hopefully over time, these best management practices that we're putting in place, we're gonna have less erosion, we'll have less impairment, but we do know that there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. Kurt, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but about, oh gosh, 15 years ago when I worked down in DuPage County for municipality, there was a DuPage River Salt Creek work group. And they were funded by the municipalities down there because they had sewage treatment plants. And at the time, IEPA was coming out with new water quality standards that would cost millions of dollars for these plants to be upgraded to meet certain discharge requirements. So they hired a scientist, and the group started getting together, and they approached the EPA and said, let us do stormwater improvements more on a whole bunch of local levels with native plantings and less salting, for example. And let us do water quality testing. Let's count the macroinvertebrate, which are little tiny fishes, I guess, or little tiny critters in the water. And let's see how that works. It took them probably about 5 or 6 years of negotiating with the EPA to allow them to do a test project. And I think it was going to take 25 years, because it was going to be a slow way of doing it. And I lost track of them. I don't know, where they're at with that, Kurt, but I thought that was an interesting approach. Like they were going to be doing a lot of little things.
Yeah, and I guess here's the secret for all of us in Lake County. DuPage County does things a little quicker and gets things out the door, and then Lake County is right behind them, and we're like second in line. So yeah, DuPage County, when the Stormwater Management Commissions were created for the collar counties around the Chicagoland area, DuPage had their ducks in a row. They got out in front, and they've been doing a great job down there. And they also did this pioneering effort to establish a watershed work group down there in the DuPage River and Salt Creek. So we rode their coattails on that one and mimicked what they did and formed the Des Plaines River Watershed Work Group. And then we also formed the North Branch Watershed Work Group. And those have dues paying members of all the municipalities, the wastewater treatment plant operators, other groups. And we look at the North Branch of the Chicago River and we look at the Des Plaines River holistically, and we monitor them holistically as well. So what are the impairments that we're trying to address? What might those sources be? And if we're looking at it at the watershed level, not only is it more cost effective, but it has more buy-in and support from all the different entities that are participating in this. We don't have a similar work group set up for the Fox River watershed. And that is something that I asked a lot of the Fox River communities. There was not necessarily a strong desire to do that at the time, but one thing that we are working on is a Fox River watershed based plan, a very large watershed planning effort. And we've met with the McHenry County folks, and they're going to be updating their watershed plans in McHenry County as well. A majority of the Fox River watershed between McHenry County and Lake, a majority is in McHenry County. and having them look at their plans while we look at ours. We're all doing this together. And, you know, Karen down in the Flint Creek, Spring Creek watershed, you guys have a very updated plan that not much will need to be done down in the Flint Creek area. The Chain of Lakes area, the Fox Waterway Agency just came out with their plan a couple years ago, but there's some other holes that we need to fill in. I know the like the Mutton Creek or Cotton Creek where Island Lake is, there's some areas we want to really take a look at water quality impairments for that area. And then also just work with McHenry County because we all share this watershed. So that's exciting. That's coming up. We've applied for a 319 grant to receive assistance for that watershed-based plan. And grant source through the EPA called the 604 for watershed planning, and we're going to submit for that as well. Sorry if my internet's getting unstable there.
Yeah. Some of you may have heard of stormwater utilities. Does anybody are you familiar with that concept? Curtis. Yeah. And when I worked for Downers Grove, that was my job to work on implementing a stormwater utility. And that might be something in the future with municipalities that have sanitary treatment plants to start up, because it's a way of, I'll say, taxing the residents based on how much impervious area they have usually for stormwater improvements. So just like you get a drinking water bill and a sanitary bill, a garbage bill, this is a stormwater bill. And the municipalities use that for funding some of these projects to get cleaner water. So I think, Jim, you had your hand up?
Yes, I participated in one of the work groups, and I'm well aware of the work that was done in DuPage Salt Creek, and have been in communication with them for a whole bunch of years. My own background is in macroinvertebrates and fish as well. One of the things that I might recommend for people that are focused on doing stormwater is a book called Urban Stormwater Management in the United States. Oops, it's what it looks like.
Who's that by, Jim?
It is by a cast of characters,
Okay.
many of whom are the country's premier folks in terms of characterizing and evaluating stormwater. Second item is the process of doing the work groups is not without problems. One of the things that IEPA has asked the work group to do is to develop something called a NARP, a nutrient reduction program. As they have done that, as IEPA has done that, there are technical parts of what they're asking people to do that are problematic. So when you're doing characterization of lakes, for instance, what you do is you look to do seasonal assessments across a whole bunch of years to catch low flow situations and high flow situations. Well, the same thing is true for waterways. And when you take a look at guidance as well, one of the things that happens is there's a very, very big difference between when you monitor on a weekly basis, or monitor on a bi-weekly basis, or monitor on a monthly basis. And there are statistical differences that are significant in terms of doing it. One of the things that had happened in our group is there was an evaluation done by a lady named Burkholder. She is a professor from North Carolina University, evaluating the character of the modeling that was being done. And people need to be cautious. The modeling, it can be very difficult. In the case of Dr. Burkholder, it was a very, very severe critique of the character of the modeling that was being done. In both cases, in the case of DuPage and in the case of Des Plaines, there's problems in terms of setting goals for the biology. And we know quite a bit about the business of what represents a stream reach that's functional and working well. And what one of the things that is needed in that case are some goals in terms of what the ambient water quality should be. It's the difference between effluent limits and numbers, which is what the sewage treatment plants use, and ambient water quality concentrations. In terms of doing the modeling, if you got good modeling, you should be able to set goals for that. In the case of DuPage, we've got a problem with that. In the case of pardon me, in the case of Des Plaines, we've got a problem with that. In the case of DuPage, they have a problem with that too. And so it is a difficult thing to be able to deal with. In terms of what is happening in on the Des Plaines and in DuPage, is there is extensive modeling of the macroinvertebrates, extensive modeling of the fish species that are there. And there are special models that something called an IPS that have been put together that evaluate the character of the water quality versus the character of the stream assemblage. All complicated, but need to be done in terms of dealing with that. One of the things they're fortunate for is SMC. Now, not every community has got an SMC to be able to put together the watershed plans. And SMC has done wetland types of assessments, and it's got a wetland book that's very valuable for people doing watershed work. Although the Des Plaines watershed plan, I think, is 1,200 or is 1,500 pages long. It's not always easy to be able to look at it. Kurt will tell you, though, that they're working on updating it, and that is taking place, and that is valuable. So, and for people that are interested in their watersheds, the first stop should be the data that SMC has got. Sorry to be so long.
Thank you. That was very interesting, Jim. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, the watershed plans that we have out there, when we first got into the watershed planning business, I guess, we looked at our sub watersheds. So the smaller watersheds like Karen's, the Flint Creek, Spring Creek watershed. That's what we categorize as a sub watershed technically, but it's part of a larger watershed being the Fox River. And when we first started developing watershed plans, the technology back then, we were using old USGS 10-foot quad maps. We were using information that we didn't have aerial photos. We didn't have aerial topography. We had very limited information, so we couldn't have a very large watershed to work with. We had to work with these sub watersheds. But now that technology has advanced, the data is easily accessible. We have satellite imagery everywhere. We've now kind of zoomed out a couple levels, and we're looking at the major watersheds. So the Des Plaines River watershed, it's the largest watershed in Lake County, and it's comprised of probably a dozen or so sub watersheds. And so, yeah, that new Des Plaines watershed-based plan, you add all those sub watersheds up and you get this large document of 1,000
Mhm.
pages. But there's a good table of contents. You can find your area in there. And that's what we're going to be doing with the Fox River as well. The Fox River might even be more than 1,000 pages because we're going to try to get McHenry County rolled into it too. So good web GIS maps. So it's not only available in like a hard copy document. There's different web tools we've created so you can navigate and find areas and find recommended projects that should be prioritized to improve water quality. So yeah, we're excited to update these plans. Fox River is coming up next. And thanks, Jim, for recognizing our efforts at SMC. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
I would say-
There's one other really very important thing that I wanted to mention. We have water quality standards for nutrients, primarily phosphorus and nitrogen in lakes. And we don't have the same sort of things in the stream systems. But the problem with our water quality standard for lakes is it is not protective of the lakes. So right now it's 0.05 milligrams per liter. When you take a look at ecoregion data for our area, it should be minimally 0.04, maybe lower in some places. That winds up being a very different, that has implications for how we choose to manage the watershed generally. And in the case of water quality standards for stream systems, there does exist some things from ecoregion analysis that tells us what the approximate things should be for the standards. And there's at least one major study that was done on what Illinois standards should be. Those things are not being used. They are not targets. And that 0.05 is really critical because our lakes need to go down lower to be able to have an appropriate type of protection against things like hazardous algal blooms.
Interesting.
Well, we are now coming up to our 8 o'clock hour. I can take one more question or comment before we conclude our meeting tonight. Anybody have any closing comments?
I have another question, Bill, but I will cede the floor in case someone who hasn't asked a question would like to go.
Go ahead, Becky.
Really dumb question. How do you know where the water flows to? How do you know it goes to this river or that river? Who tells you that? Just look at like topography maps.
Yeah, that's not always easy. There's areas in Lake County where rivers are flowing north. It's like, why is it going north?
Flint and Spring Creek both do that.
There's areas in Cook County, they drain back into Lake County and all
Yeah.
that. So yeah, the easiest way to kind of know where the water's flowing is to look at the topography, but that's a little advanced kind of technical subject matter. One thing that I find is helpful is to just look at a floodplain map, because a floodplain map has elevations on it. And the floodplain elevations, when they're going down, that's the way it's heading. If the floodplain elevations are going up, you're going upstream. But not every area in Lake County has a floodplain map. There's probably lots of areas outside of the floodplain that we flood, and we know we've experienced that with urban flooding and all that. But if it's a major creek, major river, on our Lake County Maps Online portal, you can just turn on that FEMA floodplain layer, and then it'll show you where all the floodplain is, but there's some numbers in there too. Those are the elevations. So when they're ticking down, that's the way it's heading. That might be a very too technical way to do it, Karen. What's an easier way to know where the water's flowing?
I would say just throw a stick or a leaf in the water and see which way
That
it
works
goes.
too.
If you happen to be there, but Kurt's way is better if you're looking at a bigger area.
And feel free to, contact our office too. We have staff that love helping out. We get calls from realtors a lot. They want to know if this home's in the floodplain and people are trying to make decisions whether to buy property, is it going to flood? So yeah, our staff can help out with that information, Becky.
Yeah, I just think it's complicated. Like, you go up in a drone and you watch, or you look at elevations. Does it always follow gravity?
Not always. So yeah, sometimes water will flow backwards and flow into people's basements, which we don't want.
Right, right. Well, I just want to say thank you. And it's great to have Kurt joining us tonight. And Karen, this was really
Real
Mhm.
quick before we leave, just speaking of drones, I've been working with Harper College, and they have a drone partnership with I have a drone partnership with them, I guess. And so they're teaching students how to use drones. And so they've gone out to Flint Lake for the last 2 years and have done a visual study of it with the ortho mosaics. But they're working on a grant to get a drone that can tell what kind of plants are there, which is awesome for like invasive species or what you have. So one day they'll be able to fly drones and say, this all area is XYZ and this area's got a lot of this or that. And I just think that's like Shazam, like how do they do that? So technology is coming, and like there's probably no reason for you to ever print out that 1,000-page plus, once you get that Fox River watershed study, because if it's more interactive with the current maps, it's more useful. So, but yeah, I'd like to thank Kurt for being here too, and all of you after that auspicious start we had. So thanks
Yep,
for sticking
especially
around
strong.
and
Good.
doing that.
Nobody from LA is ever allowed again.
That's right.
Well, I want to thank everybody for their time tonight. A very good and informative meeting. This will be recorded. And Mary, did you go ahead and do the AI companion summary?
Yep, I will do that. Let me see. I did, actually, I think Bill, because we went on and off, I think I may have lost it, but I did save a bunch in the chat, and anyone can save things in the chat just by clicking the 3 buttons. I'll post it in the community, and I'll post a recording of this presentation in the community. So, what is a watershed? And invite any other comments and resources.
Well, we have a lot continuing on as we end up our year here for Lake Lovers of Lake County. Remember that we have our appreciation date on November 20th. We'd love to have everybody come and attend. It's going to be a super good show of food, fun, and content from a lot of our experts. And then, of course, we've got our October 18th working group on the lake management plan for any residents or HOA in the area. And please, if you know anybody who might be interested, we still have a couple of openings, but our registration closes October 1st. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming in tonight. It was a wonderful meeting. Looking forward to our meetings in the future. Anybody who wants anything maybe to talk about, let us know. Let us know that there's something that you want to hear about, and we'll go out and we'll find the content experts, or we'll ask AI. So we'll look forward to those dates. And I'm going to say, Mary, you can go ahead and close us out for the night.
Yeah, well, I just wish everyone a great month ahead. One thing coming up, WEFTech is happening, and they have a very strong stormwater management program. And I will post that into the Lake Lover community, where you can also find other events and post your events. So please use that. And as Bill said, mention topics you want to see covered, or volunteer to cover your own, or share those as you find them. So the more we can avoid duplication of effort and share knowledge like yours, Karen, and yours, Kurt's, and Bill's, everyone on this call has something to add. We really value the collaboration aspect of the community. So
Thank you.
thank you, and have a good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank you,
night.
everyone.